is Author Update, and we've got a jam-packed episode for you today. We have some breaking news. The White House is changing the international shipping rules, and they will go into effect today, and they may affect you as an author. We'll break down exactly what it means and what you need to know. Plus, the big Anthropic class action lawsuit is entering into settlement. Amazon is making a huge update to Kindle Unlimited, allowing indie authors who are exclusive to sell their books to public libraries. We'll break this down. And we're going to talk about why Penguin Random House profits are tanking while most traditional authors are making less than minimum wage, and so much more in this episode of Author Update. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr.
And I'm Jonathan Scherger. Let's jump right into the breaking news. Today we're going to talk about why the new international shipping rules are taking effect today. The White House has ended the $800 duty-free de minimis exemption for all countries. That means if you were under the threshold of $800, you weren't going to get schwacked with the tariffs and the fees and stuff like that. It now requires a formal customs entry, and you have to pay any applicable duties or fees. Do books get tariffs then? Well, generally printed books are still duty-free. You can still see some brokerage or entry fees. Paperwork, it didn't apply under de minimis. So you need to really research your shipping avenues and see where you're going to be sending books, especially if you're doing Kickstarters and stuff and you're fulfilling internationally. You really need to take a look and do your research before you start so that you don't get blindsided and suddenly your budget is blown out of proportion on your Kickstarter, because if you don't charge the appropriate shipping, that's gonna hurt.
So the biggest impact of this is actually getting books into the United States from other countries. So let me explain how this de minimis rule works. This is the end of the world for Temu and Wish.com. So if you've ever wondered why you can order something from China for $2.99 and it gets delivered, it's because they're taking advantage of this de minimis exception, where very small items don't have to pay a duty and don't have to file any paperwork to speak of, because it's not worth it. Anything under $800, we don't have to bother with. Well, Temu completely broke the de minimis system, which was meant for sending a birthday present to your friend in another country. It wasn't meant for running an entire e-commerce empire that doesn't have to pay any duties or have anything checked. And the biggest impact of this is on BookFunnel users. So if you're a BookFunnel user, you probably got an email from BookFunnel that some of the avenues in which they are shipping you books are currently not available. So right now, if you're with BookFunnel, you have to use FedEx or Consolidated Services. It will likely expand back to all of the options will be back on the table in the future, because while the de minimis exception no longer applies to authors, the books are duty-free exception does. So we don't actually have to pay additional taxes because of this rule, but we will have to file additional paperwork. So keep this in mind. It's not a huge deal. If you're indie published and you're using print on demand, this doesn't impact you at all, because books are printed in the countries in which they are consumed almost exclusively. So if somebody buys your book in Canada, the book is actually printed in Canada and shipped from Canada. Same with UK, same with Australia. And so there's actually one area where indie authors have a real advantage. But where it gets complicated is, let's say you're using Book Vault to fulfill your Kickstarter campaign, and Book Vault is mailing individual books to all of your Kickstarter backers. Suddenly you may have to pay for FedEx instead of the United States Postal Service. So this isn't a huge deal, but it is for certain people. And I saw at least one person in the chat who is fulfilling Book Vault through Kickstarter, and this may be the most important news story for that particular person.
Oh no!
So, and you may find that your Wish.com prices went up. It's interesting because my wife was looking for a book to buy for our kids. She couldn't find it cheap in the States, but she found a copy for like $5 in the UK, and it had really cheap shipping. And it was last night. I was like, place your order now. It's going to be more expensive tomorrow. So
there is a lively discussion in our chat right now about why we're not wearing kilts. And so, first of all, for all of you, Like, I had a terrible night last night. I was actually going to do makeup for this episode. I was going to be in full woad, shirtless, and I'd find like a kilt or something somewhere.
This is proof that there is divine providence that saved
And
us from this.
the
God
Lord
caused
has the
Jonathan not
Lord
to
has
sleep.
spoken and stepped in. He's like, I don't want to see that. You're not gonna. So he is taking care
The
of all
thunder,
of you.
the thunder agrees. Big news with the Novel Marketing Conference. As we record this, there are 2 tickets remaining, 2 super tickets. That is, so if you want to come to the Novel Marketing Conference in January, do come. We want to have you, but you need to buy your tickets right away. So go to novelmarketingconference.com. There are more standard tickets and more gallery tickets. It's interesting. The more expensive the ticket, the more popular the ticket. So we have plenty of the cheap tickets, but if you want a super ticket, you better jump on it right away. There's only 2 left. Novelmarketingconference.com. It's the only conference I know of that's dedicated to helping you sell more copies of your books, whether you write fiction or nonfiction. Every year we've had a table of just or a writers group just of nonfiction authors. So I've had a lot of people emailing me and be like, I write nonfiction. Can I come? Yes, you can. But if you write fiction, you'll be in good company. We have authors at all levels of their careers. It's really worth coming. And you can learn more at novelmarketingconference.com. And we have an update on the Anthropic suit. Jonathan?
So, in the giant nothing burger that I knew this was going to turn out to be, Anthropic is settling.
It's bad for ratings, Jonathan. You have to act like this is the end of the world as we
I'm
know
so
it.
sorry that I live with 5 girls. I do my best to minimize drama. Okay, I have 5 daughters. Anthropic is settling the class action suit because there's nothing worse for a developing AI company than to be the center of controversy about AI development. They are settling the class action suit. We don't have any details yet because those details will probably not be available unless they decide that it's worthy of some press activity.
So I said this last episode, this Anthropic class action suit is not going to end AI. Everyone keeps thinking this is going, they're going to be protected from AI by the courts. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a Harvard lawyer who works for one of the really big law firms. And when I was describing this case to him, he's like, yeah, the courts are not going to destroy an entire industry. The courts do everything they can to avoid those big winner picking cases when possible. So we'll have more details. There might be some money for you in the suit, depending on how it shakes out. So we'll
in the sevens of dollars.
Hey, some of you might make dozens of dollars. Dozens. There are dozens of us. Dozens. Okay. We have an update on some SEO tips. You went to the Yoast SEO. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. It's important to understand this as an author, both for optimizing for Amazon search engine, but particularly for Google search engine on your author website. Go.
So I watched the video on Wednesday. They've been gone for a couple of months. There was a ton of stuff in the update. There wasn't much applicable to authors. So I just basically pulled the 3 top things that might apply to authors. The first story is Cloudflare now blocks AI bots by default and offers paper crawl. So if your website is using Cloudflare, there is now no current
to block AI bots by default. Perplexity's already found a way around it.
Right. There is no current clean way, though, to block AI overviews while keeping rankings. So that's something that you're going to have to
just don't block the bots.
Yeah.
Thomas's official advice is don't block the bots. Don't block any bots from your website because you're going to sell more books the more familiar the bots are with your website, because people are asking the bots what to buy.
And in big news for those of you who are doing direct sales, like in audiobooks, ebooks, or whatever, from a Shopify site, Shopify has been listed as a ChatGPT third-party search provider. This isn't an official announcement. It was actually found in documentation I think it was on the ChatGPT documentation that Shopify has been shown as a provider. What that means is when you type stuff into ChatGPT, when it spits stuff back out at you, it'll provide Shopify links. So if you optimize your Shopify store for AI search, ChatGPT is now actively prioritizing Shopify information above other informations. I'm going to keep my eye on that and see as more goes out. I work on Shopify. And so I'll let you guys know how that plays out and how you will benefit, or well, we'll see how it works. All this stuff is still really new. If ChatGPT moves to monetization where they're growing ads, then this is going to be huge because Shopify will be basically free priority ranking.
Or they'll start charging Shopify to maintain this integration into
But
the
Shopify will
future.
do it to maintain their standing on the online market. So
Right.
I only see that as benefiting people who are using Shopify. And then the last story from Yoast SEO, Meta will revoke monetization for accounts that are repeatedly reposting others' work. This is supposed to target content farms or repetitious, mass-produced content. So if you're constantly reposting things from other people's IPs or
on Facebook or Instagram, you'll
yeah,
lose Facebook or Instagram monetization, which I don't think applies to any of our audience. So it's not that you get
but
banned. It's just go
yeah,
ahead.
it's following a trend because YouTube is doing the same thing. The last time we talked about this, it was YouTube that was doing that, and that is something that authors are doing. So we made a recommendation that if you're going to do a reading of your audiobook, you put on a video of like Red Dead Redemption. Okay, but now you're reposting someone else's work and now you can't monetize that.
Not if you get well, what I was recommending was hiring somebody to give you unique Red Dead Redemption footage.
It's still Red Dead Redemption.
I don't
You're
think they're
reposting
cutting
their
down
content.
on video game videos.
Oh no,
As long,
actually, you'll see YouTube influencers. Like I follow a guy who does breakdowns of cutscenes and videos and stuff, and he's now actually been forced to break it up to keep the majority of it focused on his face, because if he doesn't do that, he's going to be demonetized. And it actually makes his videos so much less interesting because I want to get his commentary on the video, like the scene from the Warhammer secret level episode. He had to break up the combat scenes with his face because he was getting demonetized for just posting the entire thing. That's just the way the rules are changing. So that actually is a big deal.
well,
for
that's
authors.
different though. That's a video. So what I'm talking about is your own video game footage, because this is a huge part of YouTube. Is people playing Fortnite and other people watching them play Fortnite. They're not demonetizing Ninja. Me sharing my own footage, my own unique footage of a video game, I would be shocked if they actually move forward with demonetizing that, because there's so much money in it and it's really easy content and really easy engagement. If you would like to be notified when we go live, for those of you watching in the future, don't forget to ring the bell. You have to like and subscribe first. You don't have to like, but you do have to subscribe to this channel. And if you do, you'll be notified when we go live, and you'll get all of our new episodes, including our how-to episodes, which go out on Wednesdays.
CD, that's a good question. This is not banning the reposting of memes and reels. That would freaking execute Facebook. Like, that's the only reason people are on it. It's not that kind of idea, reposting that kind of content. It's just the idea of taking someone else's creation and then you trying to monetize someone else's creation.
It's a specific tactic called content farming that I've never actually seen an author use. So I don't think you need to worry about this. If you're on social media, I don't think you have to worry about this.
In other piece of big news, KU authors can now sell their ebooks to libraries, which this is a seismic shift in the landscape, because previously it's been KDP, or Kindle Direct Publishing, versus traditional publishing. And on this side is all the bookstores and the libraries and all that stuff over here, and all the award lists and the bestseller lists and all that stuff. And over here is Amazon. And indies have only been able to play on Amazon because you can't get in over here unless you have like a real specific Ingram relationship or something like that.
You can with your physical book, but the ebook exactly exclusive to the Kindle store.
But that was the war, right? Because this side of the traditional publishing hates the Amazon side. Okay, and that's why you see ebooks on the traditional side are priced at $16.99. Okay, they're actually trying to de-incentivize ebooks being bought on Amazon, is what they're trying to do, and they're willing to take a loss to do it because they see it as preserving their standing. Okay, here's the issue: if KU authors can now sell their ebooks to libraries, which is the piece of news now. Like, Amazon has updated its KDP Select program to allow ebooks enrolled in KU for page reads to be distributed to libraries. The bigger piece here to me is that libraries might actually take KU books.
Yeah, just because you have the ability to sell it doesn't mean that they're going to buy. But we're already seeing some books like Dungeon Crawler Carl entering the various library systems
Right.
rental pools, and this is a definitely something that you should pursue. I have an entire episode of novel marketing about how to use Overdrive to get into libraries.
Yeah.
And now you can ignore the part of that episode that talked about the pros and cons of whether you should be exclusive to Amazon or try to go with the library strategy. Now you can have your cake and eat it too. This is really big. The most common way that this is done is with an app called Overdrive, which is a part of Libby. But you can also do it with Drafted Digital, Publish Drive, Smashwords, and there's one other I'm forgetting the name of. So if you're using one of those tools, you can also make your book available to libraries that way. I will give you one tip now on how to get into libraries that's very straightforward, and that is ask your readers to request your book at their local library. This is the most powerful technique that all indies can do. There are other techniques, and you can listen to the episode for the other techniques, but a lot of libraries pay a lot of attention to what books their
Yes.
card holders are requesting. And if you can get even one card holder in a library system to request your book, it makes your book much more likely to be accepted. And if 5 or 6 card holders are requesting your book in a library system, you're almost guaranteed to start selling copies of your book into that library system.
So when CJ Malasey was running her I think it was her first Recruit Italianus launch, I worked with her on gamifying her launch sequence, which was part of it was you could get points in this game that we put together for requesting the book at your local library, and then people could get icons and stuff for having done this. There was a lot of social proof. It was really fun. People really enjoyed doing it. But if you do that and you can gamify your launch and then get them to request the book in your local library just as part of this game because you're on the launch team and it's just fun stuff to do, and then the author is super grateful for everything that you're doing, and you can see the world change a little bit because now the book is in the library because of you. Then that's a huge deal. I mean, people are going to jump all over that. And now the fact that libraries can list a KU book, now you don't even have to make the decision as to whether you're going to be exclusive or not, because now the library may just potentially take it, and it's easier to get a KU book for a library.
On the other hand, look at this from the perspective of a librarian who has historically been protected from 90% of authors.
Yes.
Because 90% of indie authors are exclusive to KU. And now we're getting dozens of pitches, and now they're getting thousands of pitches. So this may not have the impact you think it will because you're going to be in a crowded space. And so my advice is to move on this quickly. Most indie authors don't know that they can do this now. And so the next month is your golden window so go as soon as this episode is over, go sign up for Overdrive, start the process of getting your book available for the libraries to order, both in paper and in ebook, and then start the process of asking your email newsletter to start requesting your book. Maybe even make it a competition and be like, hey, I'll be I'll do it. I'll have a drawing to do an exclusive call with me or get a signed copy of my book or whatever. And you can enter the drawing by requesting the book and sending me proof, right? Gamify this, play with it, brainstorm ways of making this work. Listen to my episode on getting into libraries. We may do another episode on this now that this is a big part of the strategy.
Yeah,
but
I feel like this can be developed out a lot more.
Right. So you're going to have to play the game better a month from now or 2 months from now. But right now, it's Gold Rush. It's like Oklahoma Land Rush, right? You just go find some good land and grab the flag. This could be a really easy way to boost your sales.
And you do have to keep in mind also that libraries aren't just repositories of books that are open to everything. They are actually fairly like strongholds of conscience. Okay, so the acquisitions editor in the library is going to use their morality to decide what kind of books get put into the library system. So you're going to have to work your targeting appropriately. Now, one thing libraries are very susceptible to is social pressure. If you get 100 people coming in and requesting a book, at that point, it's like, it doesn't even matter what the book is. We need funding. So if we're turning down requests from 100 people for one specific book, we can't stay open, kind of a thing. So there are ways to overcome certain intransigence in the library system. Um, but I think we'll try to develop that out and talk about it more later.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing to keep in mind, I heard a stat somewhere. I'm looking to verify. I'm fact checking myself right now. It looks like 91% of librarians are registered Democrats, according to this one claim. Which I in my head it was 95%. So that sounds like it's down to 91%. So when we're talking about morality, we're talking about a Democrat morality here. So do keep that in mind. And we've covered in this show instances of bias against right-leaning authors trying to get into library systems and trying to stay in library systems. So you really have to use that reader pull tactic, because while they are left-leaning in their ideology, there's also a strong belief of every book a reader, or every reader a book, which is like one of the librarian credos, where like different readers want different books and it's the librarian's job to present those books. But it is interesting. We'll have a right-leaning books in my local library system where there's 400 copies available, and then a left-leaning book where there's 400 copies available, and then a right-leaning book on that same topic where there's 1 or 2 copies, and they're both back ordered, and you have to get on a waiting list. And there's like 20 people on the waiting list. So they'll have a book for the reader, but they may only have 1 copy. So it depends on the library.
What I'm saying is do your targeting, because every library system is localized and every acquisitions editor is different. So you're really going to have to do your research on whatever library system it is that you're targeting, and find out, because they acquire books differently. It's not even a standardized process. So just you do your targeting research and do your study, and then you'll know the best way to go, because just, calling them all Democrats isn't really super helpful when it comes to targeting information.
Now, one part of this is pricing. CD had a question. Can we talk about pricing for ebooks? Because how this works is you sell them a copy of your ebook, and then they'll lend out that copy over and over and over again. And so you don't want to sell them the ebook at the same price that you would sell an ebook to a reader. We discussed pricing strategies in that episode, and I don't remember.
I think it's like $50 for an ebook license.
Yeah, something like that. I think Overdrive has some suggested pricing. I would follow that. If we do an updated episode, we'll definitely cover this. I don't know how price sensitive libraries are. So you would think, oh, well, if I charge $40, they'll be more likely to buy my book. And that may not actually be the case. That may be because librarians aren't spending their own money; they're spending taxpayer money. And in my experience, people don't really care about taxpayer money. Even like Marines, they're shooting bullets. They're not feeling like every bullet is $1, taxpayer dollar, and shooting downrange. The budget. It's just not how government employees think. But it is a signal of quality. And so if your book's only $40, like, oh, maybe this book isn't so good. So we'll have more on this later, but right now, move on it quickly. And we have some more. We don't actually have a lot of AI news today, believe it or not, but we have one piece of AI news. There's a new best AI model, not in text, but in images. Gemini / Google rolled out a new image model called Nano Banana, which is what we use for our Scottish themed image today. In my initial tests, which was very cursory, I found that it didn't deliver on its promises. So you'll notice me and Jonathan don't look at all like ourselves. But it was crazy fast, and it was able to work with the image as I presented it, the way it was cropped. It still can't do the one thing I want an AI image generator to do that none of them seem to be able to do this, which is make a 16:9 image. I don't know why this is so hard, but it couldn't crop the image to 16:9, and it couldn't make the image 16:9, but GPT Image 1 can't do it either. But where it's supposed to excel is in persistence, where you can take the same character and replace them over and over again. And so like for a children's book, you have the same dog in every page doing something different. It looks the same. So it's supposed to be really good at that. And it's also supposed to be really good at editing, where everyone's talking about this is going to put Photoshop out of business because you can now just describe how you want the photo to look, and it will do all of the Photoshop type work just from a single prompt. Very cheap from a tokens perspective, very fast. This is the new image engine to watch. And some of the tests I saw somebody else do, not super good with text. So it may not be able to make a book cover for you on a single prompt, but it might be able to make the image for the book cover for you. GPT Image 1 is probably still the best overall if you're wanting to work with text and images together.
We just keep your mind open to a lot of, like, Gemini tends to be super censored. So if you're going to go for something, and this matters, like, I'm a Marine writing Marines shooting at zombies, and if there's a censor filter on violence and they decide guns are bad all of a sudden, you're going to see some really wonky stuff when you have
probably
Marines
couldn't
pointing broomsticks at, zombies. Like, what's happening here? So there might be limited use cases. It really depends on what you're going for.
We had another question about the libraries. So David had a question about if you're traditionally published. Nothing we talked about applies to you if you're traditionally published, because your traditional publisher is probably already pursuing libraries. And if you are running a traditional publisher or running a publisher as an indie, you just do it as the publisher. So technically, you're not a self-publisher. You're an independent publisher. You're a publishing house that has only one author that you work with. So if you think of it that way, that's how you would interface with libraries. And for libraries that are biased against indies, creating a publishing company that's like Acme Publishing LLC sometimes works, actually.
Right.
There are filters that try to filter out indies that there's so many publishers and so many imprints that having a publishing house that's branded separately from you, which means it can't be thematically tied to your books. Sometimes somebody is like, I write books about hope, and then their book publisher is Hope Leaf Press. It's like, okay, that's very obviously an indie book because, every book starts with, hope for tomorrow, hope for today. And the publisher is Hope Leaf Press. I'm like, okay, that's
that's some genetic
stuff
right there.
A little too matchy there. But if it's Acme Publishing and then it's, Hope for Tomorrow, that looks more like a traditionally published book. All right. So we have some more traditional publishing news. There's been some layoffs. Jonathan?
Yep. Bloomsbury US has eliminated 5 positions within its children's division. They're describing it as a strategic shift toward publishing a more curated list, which is not specific at all in the slightest.
I'm going to translate the corporate speak.
Like, is that a gradation? Is there like a little curated and whatever? According to a spokesperson, Bloomsbury US is a strong and thriving business, and these changes were limited solely to the children's division. Which is hysterical because you think children's books would sell like hotcakes, because you should see my kids and the way that they would buy books. All right?
My children eat books. So if you make a book that's popular enough,
you have to buy the same
copies. I think we're on our 4th copy of Dr. Seuss ABC. We own multiples. They haven't eaten, but they definitely ate. They chewed through the first several copies we owned. So I'm starting to, because we've been covering like layoffs at traditional publishers quite a bit, and these stories are all going to sound the same if we're not careful. And so what I'm starting to do now is my own research, checking out the publisher and basically doing a marketing audit of the publisher. So I did that for Bloomsbury, and I specifically was looking at their children's books. But before that, Bloomsbury is the company that publishes Sarah J. Maas. If you go to their Discover Books section of their website, there's literally an entire column just for Sarah J. Maas. And so Court of Thorns and Roses is one of the hottest selling books of last year. Basically, this one book and this one author, because that book has sequels, is not single-handedly propping up the company, but it is the source of most of their revenue. So I'm not talking about Sarah J. Maas's books here. I just looked at their children's books, and I pulled up the first book on their website, and it had 1 review on Amazon. I was like, oh, and it had been out for over a month. So that's not very good. Pulled up the next one. Good. 0 reviews on Amazon. Pulled up the next one. 2 reviews on Amazon. I'm like, ooh, okay.
Holy
now we're getting into some numbers here. I could not find a book that had double-digit reviews in the children's book section. Also, many of these books didn't even exist in print, which is an indication the publisher
What?
knew that they were dogs, and they were all, without
Yeah.
exception, super woke. So they were the kind of covers that me as a parent buying books for my children would not even look at. I would not. They're so full of virtue signaling, left leaning virtue signaling, that I would not trust the content of any of those books. And so part of what's happened here is that they are just out of sync with the zeitgeist. So they're a UK publisher, and the UK leans left of the United States. This is in the US division of the UK publisher, though, and which is where the layoffs are. And so if you're a foreign, because I know we have a very international audience, you'll need to realize the United States elected Donald Trump by the popular vote. So if you want to understand American readers, you need to understand that Trump is still very popular here. In fact, a lot of people are even more excited about Trump now than they were in November.
They're
when they
saying
voted
he's
for
the
him.
best president that has ever presidented.
I'm not saying it's a golden age, but I am saying that maybe it's an orange age. It's the new orange age of America.
Okay.
So Bloomsbury is very out of step with that, and there's also like 5 employees running a division that's publishing books that are underperforming your typical indie book. This is kind of very classic what you'll see in these traditional publishers, where they get into a kind of a decadent spiral where they're publishing a book not out of economic incentive, but out of a kind of a moral religious imperative of like, we're
Right,
trying to
and we
advance these causes, and we don't care about whether or not anyone actually wants to buy this book or not.
right. Well, this is running parallel to news we've already talked about in the weeks past, which is now because of the way that things are changing and the way consumers are buying books, and there's less money to be had. These companies are now cutting fat that's not actually doing anything. So, I mean, if you're telling me that a children's book doesn't have a physical copy, I don't even know any children who read ebooks. Like, they don't read children's books on tablets.
So
Okay.
you imagine the
Like,
market for a children's ebook. You're trying to target the kind of parent who is willing to put a tablet into the hands of their children, but also wants them to read books on that tablet rather than playing Candy Crush or whatever on
yeah.
the tablet. So that does exist. And I will say ebook sales in the children market didn't exist pre 2020, and they did start going up in 2020 and actually became
Sure.
something, but it's still the lowest penetration of ebooks by a long shot.
So what I'm saying is, if your book doesn't get a physical printing, they're fulfilling a contractual obligation, because it's in your contract that they get to distribute the book in whatever formats that they think best fit the market or whatever, and they can just kill your book. And if they're putting out a children's book only as an ebook,
it's getting basically no marketing, no reviews, no effort.
They're just fulfilling contractual obligations.
Imagine being one of these authors with Bloomsbury.
Exactly.
I'm with the same publisher that Sarah J. Maas has. That book is selling like crazy. And meanwhile, they're not helping you adapt your book for the zeitgeist. They're not promoting your book in any way, and they're not even printing your book, which you could do if you were indie. It's like, wow, this is worse than nothing. And now you're only getting the 15% royalty in addition to whatever advance that you got.
So you got one review on your book, which is probably the one marketing guy that made it through the layoffs.
So anyway, that's what's going on with Bloomsbury. Now let's talk about Penguin Random House. So we have their financials have come in. What's going on with Penguin Random House? So shifting publishing companies over one.
Right. They saw revenues climb to about 2.7, which is about a 2.7 billion. Sorry, marking about a 2% increase, about 53.6 million from the same period last year. But that was largely fueled by the acquisition of Hay House in 2024. Their profits took a hit. They dropped about 41.98 million
of their EBITDA. That's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and I think amortization. I forget the A in EBITDA.
Anyway, dropped about $42 million to about 297.3 million, which is a 12% decline, which is attributed mainly to lower revenues and their core U.S. business, escalating costs, growth-related expenses, yada, yada, yada. They did say there were some bright spots. Their audio publishing segment and their publishing services continued to shine. International Arms posted strong revenue and earnings growth. The UK division got market share, and the UK book market is actually like really good. So Thomas, what are
Yeah.
your
So,
thoughts on how this whole thing reads? Like when the data happens this way and when the money happens this way, what does that look like for Penguin?
so this is what an industry in decline looks like.
So bad.
Earnings going down is always bad, but the fact that their only revenue growth is coming from acquisitions
Right. That's what I saw.
is another concerning sign for the industry as a whole. So we see this with like Protestant churches, where like Protestant churches will like close, but like there's still some people going to one church, and so they'll leave and go to another church. So if you're in the like hot church, it doesn't feel like churches are closing all over because more people are coming to your church, but it's not because like people are converting to Protestantism. It's because other churches are closing and there's like fewer churches in town overall, fewer
Right.
people going to church overall. It's an industry in decline. And we're so switching from the religion back to the actual industry. They're not doing well. Their revenue growth isn't because their books are doing better. Their revenue growth is because they're buying other companies that are also in distress in hopes that if we combine their powers, we'll be able to do well, which often doesn't work out. It's very difficult. Acquisitions are very expensive. I remember reading a business book. It was like top business blunders of all time, and it was like the 10 most biggest blunders of all time and how expensive they were and what the lessons were. And I think 8 out of the 9 out of those 10 were acquisitions and mergers. Like M&A is very often a very expensive mistake. Not always, and sometimes it can work. But connecting this with the Bloomsbury story earlier, there is a fundamental problem kind of across traditional publishing that is what is the word I would use is decadence. That's not the word that they would use. They would use phrases like cost structures or escalating costs. But there's a kind of an industry-wide decadence that's really hurting traditional publishing. And the lean, mean indies are inheriting the industry. So, and I'm using decadence purposefully because I want to kind of allude to like a Rome in the 4th century, right? Where it's very wealthy, very extravagant, very wealthy aristocratic class, right? The elite Romans in the 5th century were as wealthy as Romans ever were, or comparable. But you've got these lean Ostrogoths who are hard men living hard lives and hard women living hard lives. And it's the Ostrogoths that are going to be living in the palaces of those Romans.
Why is this your metaphor? We literally have Braveheart on the thumbnail. Like this is the English versus the Scots.
Well,
the English would come in and take whatever they wanted from the Scots and they would treat them however they wanted. And that's how the traditional book industry treated indies or self-pubs for the longest time.
Or treated authors.
We will bless you when we bless you, and we will take from you what we want, whatever we think. And then the Scots decided they had enough. And we got Mel Gibson.
So what needs to happen in traditional publishing is that they need to embrace frugality. Is the first thing that needs to happen. There needs to be a leanness, a hustle culture. So people who are willing to work hard and make less money, right? And less extravagance kind of. So move out of New York City. So if I were put in charge of Penguin Random House, I would move them out of New York City, and to do 2 things: one, to move somewhere cheaper, but also to get rid of the people who don't want to move, who don't have that hustle attitude.
They're not gonna do that. That's
a
prestige thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no way.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that that's what I would do. I'd be like, hey, all the other big 5 can be in New York City. We're moving out of New York City. And we're doing that to send a signal, because the other piece of this is there's a zeitgeist mismatch. Part of the reason that revenues are down is that the new books are not doing well.
Right.
With some exceptions. So Romantasy is doing really well. Sarah J. Maas is like single-handedly propping up all of traditional publishing right now. I saw a number that she had sold, I think, $300 million worth of books. And this is from my memory, so I may not have that right, but it was like a huge part of Bloomsbury's revenue was Sarah J. Maas. So the Pareto principle is really important here. But setting those kind of hits in Romantasy aside, there's a cultural shift that traditional publishing is not taking advantage of. They're out of sync, and it's causing a lot of their books to fail completely. right? So if you go to a traditional publisher, there's typically a page that has their new releases on it. And so you can go and you can cross check those new releases on Amazon and see how many reviews they're getting and what their Amazon sales rankings are. And you'll find, and you'll be shocked actually, this big traditional publisher that's wooing you, these new books aren't doing good at all. They're
Right.
getting single digit reviews. They're in the 5 digit or 6 digit rankings in terms of sales. And it's like, wow, they're not doing well. And then the other way to check is you go to the bestseller list on Amazon and see how far down in a category you have to go before you can find a single traditionally published book. So the barbarians are already at the gates. Authors are already making more money as indies. It doesn't mean that all indies are making money. There's a lot of indies who are also not making money. And there's lots of issues there in terms of, if you wrote a bad book, it doesn't matter how you published it. No one's going to want to buy it. If it has a bad cover, no one's going to want to buy it. So the publishing method isn't as important as the quality of the book and the quality of the marketing. But these publishers are in decline, and there are things that they can do to fix it. But I'm not seeing any indication in any of the big publishers that they're even aware that they're out of sync culturally. They are aware that their cost structures are out of control, which is why we're seeing publishers like Bloomsbury laying off people in a very easy section to lay off, right? If I were in charge of Bloomsbury, I'm like, these children's books aren't selling anything. They're not even worth printing in print. We have 5 staff positions. That's a huge payroll for a sector that's not bringing in any money at all. That's an easy layoff to make, but they're going to have to make deeper cuts moving forward, I suspect.
All right, so I'm going to do some LinkedIn terminology because that's my favorite lingo to use. We're going to circle back to the library thing because there was like a whole big comment thread that happened while we were talking about how everything is being destroyed. So Matthew Bowman had a question on the subject of one author publishers. What about an author imprint that is with multiple publishers? When it comes to going through libraries, your publisher owns your book. Okay, so they choose where it distributes. If they control it on Amazon, they're going to be controlling it going to the library. So if you have multiple presses that are putting your books out, that's multiple people owning your work. And then they're just going to have to be the ones that make the decision to put it in the library or not.
And it's not uncommon for successful traditional authors like Larry to have multiple publishers that they work with. In fact, Larry is now working with multiple publishers, which means that the metadata for different books and the rights and all of that is handled by different publishers. And I will say, if you're wanting to go after libraries, do listen to my metadata episode, which I feel like I talk about. That needs to be on the bingo
You really
card.
love that episode.
You know who really loves metadata to the bottom of their hearts? Librarians.
This is
true. Metadata.
They had their own system I had to learn in school.
Dewey created his decimal system, which was like the first metadata system,
and
like 100 years
were like, yes.
before the term metadata was even coined. Like when tech people in the 1900s were inventing metadata, the librarians are like, oh, we've been doing this forever. So make sure your metadata ducks are in order if you want librarians to like your book. If half the fields are empty, even if you're doing the shenanigans with the publishing company, they'll see that your amateurish metadata is going to make you look indie.
Are fan conventions dying? So there was a recent Fandom Pulse article that has been making some kind of waves over the past couple of weeks, and it's titled "The Death of the Fan Convention: From Star Trek to Worldcon. These events are fading away." And the whole article was given the idea that fan conventions are actually not being attended as well as they were. That's really funny, Matthew.
These conventions. Thomas loves metadata more than Zeitgeist because Zeitgeist is metadata for history.
And Tom is just like, ha!
I feel so seen, Matthew. I feel so seen.
Yay. Hooray. Authors love talking about metadata.
No,
seriously, you want to be found today, you got to use metadata. I used to find people based on metadata, and they didn't even know that data existed. Okay, you want to be found, you got to know how to use metadata. Cons have always been vital hubs for connecting with readers, pitching ideas, building community. Star Trek is really well known for doing fan conventions well, at least they were, and then the one people really liked was Star Trek Original Series and then Star Trek The Next Generation. It was really fun to meet them at conventions, and they loved their fans, and they connected with them really well. But these guys are getting older, like a lot older, and
The
The,
fan attendance is way down at
yeah,
the Star Trek conventions. It's way down at
you
Worldcon.
also
Dragon
had
Con still has good numbers of signups, as Justin is pointing out. So it's not that they're going away entirely. And um, I feel like part of this is a cultural thing because the more right-leaning conventions like LibertyCon sells out its tickets in like 24 hours. Realmakers just did a big announcement last night that they're expanding their convention for next year. And so I don't know how much this is a kind of rebellion against fan culture, convention culture generally. Some of it is they never recovered from the pandemic, right? So for a year or 2 years, no conventions happened hardly. LibertyCon probably happened because ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do.
right. So LibertyCon, so each con has its own personality, and there's no just this is a con. Okay, each con has its own personality. LibertyCon is very much a loyalty based thing. They keep their tickets available low, and then they say, "Come back next year. We're putting tickets on sale right now. You have to get your ticket right now, or you're not coming back." Um, and again, LibertyCon is libertarian in the extreme, which was huge, especially in 2020, when everything was left leaning and everybody's like mask up, and everyone was imposing morality on everyone else. LibertyCon was huge, very popular because it was a way of defiance. Okay, and then you can follow on. So it stayed popular because people wanted to be associated with that, and the people who go to LibertyCon want to be associated with that. Realm
and
makers,
Dragonsteel is very popular. Actually, no, it looks like it sells out every year, but it's only selling 7,500 tickets.
right? They're keeping the ticket numbers low.
Yeah.
So you can say we sold out. You had 12 tickets.
But it's also in Utah, so it's not like it's in like some of these conventions are in like either in Vegas, which is kind of a hub city in a unique way. It has direct flights to every town in America, or it's in a city like Atlanta, which is a hub for Delta. So it's really easy to get a flight to Atlanta if you're flying Delta, for instance, which is easier than getting a flight to some random town in Utah or even Salt Lake
right.
City. Isn't that's not a major airport, so it's harder to do a
Oh,
big
it's the worst
convention.
airport in the world, though, only because you have to walk so far.
There we
Like
go, a Marine
3
complaining about
miles to get to
marching. Oh
security.
my!
Holy cow!
So I think that this fandom pulse article is perhaps overstating it. I don't think that fandom culture is dying overall, but some fandoms I think are dying out. I think the Marvel fandom is really struggling.
Yeah.
I think the Star Trek fandom is really struggling. I think the Star Wars fandom is really struggling. I
So
think the kind of
this is the downside of deconstruction, right? Because you had this subversion, right, where Rey doesn't embrace the Jedi code; she burns it.
and the Jedi aren't good anymore. They're evil.
Right. So you're subverting the very thing that made you popular in the first place because you're like, I got to keep this fresh somehow. But you can't attack yourself that much because then you get 10 years down the road and you're
Because
seeing
people would have
declining
Jedi
numbers.
weddings, but if the Jedi aren't good anymore, do you want a Jedi wedding if the Jedi are evil? It means like you really hurt your fan base when you break your promises and you
Yeah.
change your world. And I think that that's what we're seeing more than people like to gather over points of common interest. This is not breaking
Yes.
news. This is a universal element of the human condition, right? I want to be around other people who are like me. I want to talk to people about things that we have in common. And if I have kind of an obscure taste or preference, I want to be able to interact with people who also share that nerdiness, right? If there was a Zeitgeist convention, I would be signing up. I'd be like, let's talk about Zeitgeist for an entire convention. Or if you're really into book marketing, we just happen to have a book marketing convention for you. It's called the Novel Marketing Conference, which you can sign up for. Get more information at novelmarketingconference.com.
More about metadata and zeitgeist.
Jonathan might be talking about metadata a little bit on his Amazon page
actually, I
optimization
am.
talk.
I'm
Yeah.
doing a talk on optimizing the Amazon page, and man, it's gonna go really deep. Y'all are probably gonna learn how to kill people. It's gonna be.
Can you point the microphone more at your mouth? You're coming in and out. Gotta work on the aiming there.
It got mad at me.
Yeah, just to rotate it so that it's pointing at your
They
mouth.
got
You'll get
mad
a little
though.
bit better audio. So we're getting a lot of comments in the chat on what people think about conventions, whether they think that they're going or not. For those of you listening in the future, if you want to see the live chat, the chat room today is hopping. Do come live, click like, turn on notifications. We have another Fandom Pulse article, or actually there were several articles about authors making less than traditional authors making less than minimum wage. Jonathan?
In an industry that's often been glamorized by blockbuster deals and celebrity authors, everyone thinks about Michael Crichton or Stephen King or the big names and stuff like that. New insights are revealing a much harsher financial landscape for most writers. There's not as many millionaires as the traditional publishers would like you to think. The average novelist, the upfront payments, the advances, are coming in at about $403 for a short story collection to about $100,000 for a multi-book deal, depending on the track record and market expectations. Most deals are in the $5,000 to $25,000 range. That's not great when it takes you multiple years to write the book.
It's often pennies per hour.
Yeah,
Many
if you're
traditionally published authors, when they do the math, find that they're making 50 to 75 cents an hour writing books.
yeah, you're not living off of $5,000, especially if it took you 6 months to write the book and then the publisher took 2 years to publish it.
What's interesting is everyone at the publisher is making money. The editors are making money, the publishing staff are making money, and they're all making like minimum wage or more. Many of them are making good salaries. It's only the authors who are making pennies per hour, and it's only because they have such a unique financial relationship with the publishers, because it's actually illegal to pay someone less than minimum wage if they're an employee. And it's really difficult to pay somebody less than minimum wage if they're an independent contractor. But because authors aren't paid salaries, and because they're not even independent contractors, I guess they do get a W or a 1099, so maybe they're independent contractor in that way. But because the nature of the relationship, authors are get the very smallest bite out of the apple. And it's because authors gave up all of their control and all of their margins with this thing called the advance. So because the publishers give the authors money quickly, they're the first to get paid, they're the least to get paid.
Right.
Although what my heart really goes out to all of the authors with small publishing houses, which don't even get the advance. So they get all of the downsides of not making any money because they're with a traditional publishing house, and they're not getting an advance. So they're getting like 2 or 3 cents an hour. like, why are you going with traditional publishing? It's like, it's just a vanity play. It's like, well, I don't want to do it myself. It's like, why not? Do it yourself.
There are so many tools
Take
available right now.
responsibility.
Literally just
100 years
take
ago.
a week, study it out. I mean, Thomas has so many episodes and stuff on how to do this. I learned how to do it. I'm a Marine. We're like professional idiots. No one plays
He
stupid
chews
better
crayons
than us.
and he could figure it out. There's hope for you.
I've published 10 books now, and they're doing fairly all right.
But circling back to what we were talking earlier about decadence, 100 years ago, only 20% of Americans worked for a government or a company that had over 50 employees. Now it's like 90% of Americans work either for a government or for a company that has over 50 employees. We have lost our ability to be self-employed or to work for a small business. And this is bad for us as a people, because the bigger of an organization you're in, the more it crushes your soul. Like you worked for the federal government as what was the impact, Jonathan, on your soul? Was that a soul enriching experience, or did it give you trauma that you're still working through to this very day?
In their words, we didn't issue you a soul. We will not be paying you disability on that.
So there is something to be said about paddling your own canoe and running your own business. And I think it's actually really good for you. It creates a kind of maturity where you're responsible and you can't complain about your boss because you are your boss. And it's not easier. It's just as much work, but gives you responsibility. And I think taking on responsibility is really good for your character. It's the kind of suffering that builds character, as opposed to just getting walked on and being helpless and powerless. It, maybe that can build character, but I think the kind of suffering that comes from taking responsibility builds character faster, and it's that character that's going to give you the grit that you need for the hard times to come.
Right. So there's developing, right, where you're like in boot camp and you're getting stronger because they're stripping away what you don't need and they're putting on you what you do need. And then there's oppression, which is you're just being held down and you can't get stronger because the whole point is to keep you from getting stronger. It's where they take away the straw you use to make your bricks.
Justin said he has a good. Sorry, are you done with your thought?
Sure.
Justin said he had a good experience working with Bain. Yeah, but Bain has fewer than 50 employees, right? So there's difference. It's different when you're in a small organization. You know the names of everybody on your team. So it's not like we all have to be autonomous, atomized individuals. That's not what I'm advocating for. What I'm advocating for is responsibility, and paddling your own canoe is a really good way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. Indy says, I quit. So don't just quit your day job, right?
Yes.
It takes time to build up to the new thing. But there's a lot of money that can be made in this industry. Indie authors are making money. You can also make money selling services to fellow authors. We have a job board at authormedia.social. And if you go to conferences like the Novel Marketing Conference, which you can learn more about at novelmarketingconference.com, there's many opportunities to connect with authors, either to hire you if you're looking for work, or to hire if you're looking for experts to surround yourself with, so you don't have to do everything yourself. So,
but also keep in mind that, and I'm just going to provide a counterpoint here, Thomas. Like, I don't write for money, right? And so I don't think most authors do. I think maybe there's a dream of
that's why
that,
they
but
get
it's
taken
more like
advantage of financially.
right, exactly. And I'm okay with that. Authors need to understand metadata. They need to understand numbers. They need to understand business, and so that's so they don't get taken advantage of. But the whole reason we get started is just so we can tell stories. We're storytellers, and people can read the stories and enjoy them. Okay, my novels typically have pretty strong points I'm trying to make. And so I want people to think about those points and be challenged by them and hopefully make a beneficial change in their life after that. The money lets me keep doing it. And so it doesn't become as much of a pursuit. I know there are people out there who are trying to pursue writing as a money-making business, and you have miscalculated.
It's very much like the lottery. There's no middle class. There's winners and there's losers. And there are people who are making tons of money. And Larry Correa bought himself his own mountain, so he can shoot guns and no one can bother him. And so you're either making,
and yet he goes on Twitter where
money.
They still bother him.
What
was it? He got arrested by the Massachusetts Copyright Office. What, yesterday?
he didn't really get arrested, but
I know that
he really enjoys
funny.
picking fights with these X accounts with 100 followers. And
bought my mountain so no one would bother me. Goes on X.
He could be that meme, It's a Simple Life, but he chooses to go on X and pick fights with people. So there's not a lot of a middle class, particularly in traditional publishing. There's more of a middle class in indie publishing, particularly with authors who've learned how to write quickly and who've learned how to find an audience, where they just keep writing books for the same group of people. Maybe they only have 1,000 fans or 10,000 fans, but they're giving those fans a book every 3 months or 4 months, and that's enough to pay the bills. But it's not like being a plumber. Right, the typical trash collector in New York City makes more money than almost all but like 20 of the authors in New York City. And the median trash collector makes like 10 times more money than the median author. So the median author in the UK is making about $7,000 a year, and the median garbage collector in New York City is making. Actually did the research on this. I want to say probably $70,000 or $80,000.
Yeah.
And so
what you do is you be a garbage guy and dictate your novels whilst you are garbaging.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. I really did look this up, what a garbage collector makes, so I could put some numbers to it, because it's easy to forget just how much money people make if they have a low status job. So this final thing as we're talking, because we're just about out of time, but as we're talking about decadence, a lot of people are writing. They tell themselves because they're wanting to change the world, but really they're seeking status.
Yeah.
They want people to respect them. They want esteem and admiration. And they don't realize that they're bankrupting themselves. So if you have the money to do it, right? If you're idle rich, writing is a wonderful activity to keep your mind active. And we have a lot of idle rich that are retired, right? So what our ancestors would have called idle rich, we now call retired. And people are like, I just want to write. I don't need money. I get checks from the government and checks for my pension. And I have a lot of money stored, and my house has appreciated a million times since I bought it for $5,000 in the 1960s. And so there's that kind of writer, and they're very much not financially and motivated, which is very different from the kind of younger, hungrier writer. And sometimes by taking the low status path, you actually make more money. You know, the people in the orchestra pit make more money than the singers on stage, right? Because they get less status, and they make up for the status with being able to pay the bills.
I'm not hungry.
We will be back next week, likely reporting that all of the super tickets for the Novel Marketing Conference have been sold. So if you want to grab a super ticket, now is your chance. There's more regular tickets and gallery tickets. If you want all of that explained, go to novelmarketingconference.com. I have a video there that breaks it down. I have lots of great information. We'd love to meet you in person. I will be there in person. Jonathan will be there in person. The super ticket gives you access to a one-day pre-conference workshop, which is limited to just a handful of authors. The room only sits 30 people, but we're going to have a bunch of like webmasters. So it's not just me helping people with their websites, and we're going to be working on our websites all day long. So if you wanted a chance to work on your website along with other authors in the room, but where if you get stuck, you can just raise your hand and a nerd will come and help you, or I will come and help you. That's what the super ticket gives you access
you're
to.
You're a nerd too.
Oh, I'm in a room full of nerds. They'll point at me and say, nerd.
Tell me more about the Ostrogoths.
Don't get me started about the Ostrogoths. All right. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. And if you want to chit chat about this episode, authormedia.social. Live long, prosper. I'm Thomas Umstead Jr.
And I'm Jonathan Schurger Jr.
Thanks for listening.